Okay guys, so I think it's time I introduced myself a little bit. Recently this channel has hit 2,000 subs, which is crazy. And I asked you guys in the comments what would you personally want me to do in this regard. And this one person suggested doing an art showcase where I would just introduce myself in this way. So today I'm gonna go through some of my artwork that is not under NDA, obviously, and show you some of my projects. It all started from this weird anime phase of my life, and even though every time I look at that I cringe a lot, it was still super fun to make, you know. Back then I also used to do a little bit of cosplaying, and I remember how supportive my Ukrainian cosplay buddies were about these artworks. And you know, for me back then, art was more about expressing myself and having fun than becoming a professional artist, so to say. And I guess that was one of the things that made me stick to drawing a lot and gradually improve automatically over time. And back then I also did a lot of crossovers with different characters and universes, and even made this reimagining Adventure Time project, where I just painted the main characters in the classical fantasy game setting. In 2014 everything changed because a whole world of 3D opened up to me. I started learning ZBrush, and I was playing Witcher 1 back then, like non-stop, which is why my first works were connected to the Witcher 1 game. I sculpted Noonwraiths and Geralt of Rivia in Japanese setting, and you know, working on these mini projects helped me get acquainted with ZBrush functionality a little bit. After that I was really torn between 2D and 3D. As you see, I created tons of random stuff and random mini projects, until in 2019 I decided to enroll the visual storytelling course by Tori Polska. And guys, it opened my eyes to the visual storytelling as an art form. On this course we had to choose a fairy tale, a genre, and reimagine this fairy tale anew, developing a project with designed characters, environments, story, etc. I chose Hansel and Gretel tale and combined it with, obviously, dark fantasy genre, and came up with the story of us playing as one of the vigilantes that go through this corrupted fairy tale land and slaying those fairy tale characters that basically went nuts because of this corruption. And in this very case, our game starts when our character finds the inconsolable father, who asks us to help him find his children, Hansel and Gretel. These kids were starving and they went to the woods, but what they didn't know is that in the woods an evil witch resides, which is corrupted with the curse of gluttony, and its kids. When we find the gothic frozen castles that plays with this candy house imagery and the candy imagery overall, we enter this castle, but instead of the evil witch, we see Hansel and Gretel. As the storyboard shows us, the kids did find an evil witch in the castle, and as the original fairy tale says, they managed to kill her. But what they didn't know is that they will be now the ones corrupted with the curse of gluttony, and they now will reside in the castle forever, becoming those evil witches that kidnap and eat the kids. Similar to the original tale, Hansel would become this huge uncontrollable beast because of the amount of the kids he had eaten, while Gretel would be this controlling mind behind Hansel. This course left an awesome impression on me. Tori is a person with the biggest heart and huge expertise, and guys, I'm telling you, if Tori ever reopens this visual storytelling course, I can't recommend it to you enough. Because the amount of the practical advice I got there, it was like mind-blowing. Next is one of the projects that I made for the ArtStation challenge on the Arthurian legends. I never managed to finish my entry on time because clearly it was too ambitious for the stated deadline, but I managed to finish it overall, and I'm talking about my Guinevere project. Not to confuse with Guinevere from Dark Souls. The story behind this project is to show how could Arthurian legends go a little bit dark and twisted way after the Lady of the Lake had cursed Arthur and everyone close to him to suffer with eternal rot and to suffer from what they were most afraid of. So with Guinevere I decided to play with the concept of vanity, which is why the thing she would be afraid of is obviously losing her infamous beauty. So after Guinevere's face started to rot, she retired to convent, and when you first meet her during the boss fight, On the first stage, she is wearing a garb that is similar to what would nuns wear, but on the second phase, this garb erupts in fire and you start seeing her silver armor with engravings of the curse that the Lady of the Lake had casted. Fun fact, in my uni we had a short course on Old English, which is why all of those engravings on her armor are the actual Old English curse phrases. It is definitely a small detail and no one would notice that, but to me, it is these details that make design interesting not only on the macro level, but also on a micro level as well. Her silver mask was cast in order to remind what her face used to look like and would look really creepy on this like rotted and burned flesh. So I also tried to take my time and fill in all of those lore item descriptions so that if one is interested, one could read them and just put the story together. Next project that I wanted to talk about is the one that literally changed my life. Back then, Vati Vidya, who I'm sure you already know of, but just in case you don't, you should just stop everything you're doing, pause this video and go check out his channel. I promise you won't regret this. So Vati back then announced a Dark Souls Unseen Lands competition where we had to imagine how would some of the lands mentioned but not shown in the actual game look like. At first I was really hesitant if I should even take part in it because I've never done environments before and didn't really believe that I would like finish it even, but in the end I decided to give it a try and oh my god guys, I was so obsessed. All of my thoughts were about the land that I chose, about Karim, a land deeply connected to Velka, goddess of sin, and Kaitha, goddess of tears, and lots of other characters. I wanted to depict the duality of this place, how on one hand there would be this religious movement of maidens and their respective knights that would set out on this pilgrimage to spread the word of the Way of White and Kaitha, but at the same time another religious movement sprouted, the cult of Velka, the goddess of sin. And I created the statue of Velka, this goddess of sin and goddess of crows, and tried to imagine how the worshippers of Velka envisioned their spiritual transformation from the non-believers, through a couple of stages, to the crows completely. And those who have played Dark Souls 1 know how ironic that is, because we actually see in-game how those people turned out to be. Not the regal birds, but rather deformed hybrids that were locked in the painted world of Ariamis. And on the painted worlds note, the painted worlds of Dark Souls are deeply connected to Velka by default. Those are the places where someone who was chased could find the escape, and everything related to the goddess of sin and everything that the Lords fear would be locked in those painted worlds. So since my work is literally about Velka, I decided to create a painted world myself. I'm super grateful to Vati for this challenge and for all of the other challenges, because it was not only about creating art in itself. These challenges really brought the community together and pushed the level of fan art to like unspeakable levels. Next project is the one that literally shifted my life 180 degrees. And it was working on the Mortal Shell game and being supervised by Vitaly Bulgarov. I was stunned when I got a notice that I actually have passed an art test. And my main role in the game was to create a couple of the item concepts, as well as some of the icons based on the provided models by Vitaly Bulgarov. Now, to be honest, I've always been kind of lucky when it came to art leads and art directors. Everyone was super kind to me, but I was really blown away with the positive and informative approach that Vitaly and Cold Simmery Studio provided. And apart from that, come on guys, their art aesthetics and their art brief was so inspiring that working on this project was like a pure pleasure. Following that, in 2020, there was another of Vati's competitions, the Demon's Souls competition. As you know, in the Demon's Souls game, there were 5 available and 1 broken archstone, which presumably could lead us to the Land of Giants. Our task was to envision how could the land look like, or how could the characters from that land look like. For that challenge, I really wanted to build on top of the existing cut content and to play with the concept of not the giants being the evil guys, but rather the humans with their cruelty and greed. And after you get the access to the 6th Archstone, you are first introduced to the Necto Shrine that is kind of similar to the Nexus, and that unveils the rite of the maidens, where their initiation includes their eyes being sealed with wax. you see that there is only one maiden left in this shrine, and she tells you that all of her kin were captured and are being experimented on by the evil alchemists. She asks you to defeat them, and after clearing the territory, the Maiden in Ashen sends you to the distant dream. You get into the land of giants, and it turns out that all of the giants are dead. They were taken down by the humans, greedily looking for the knowledge of the soul's arts. And you proceed through the level, and you find the last giant kneeling in front of the graves who he had to create with his own hands for his own comrades. When he sees you, a human-looking being, he initiates the fight, driven by his willingness to avenge his friends. You kill the last giant and find a castle nearby where you see the ballistas, which were presumably used to kill the giants. And in the castle you see a lot of snake imagery as the hint on both greedy craving of knowledge and the treachery of the giants' nation that were first open to humans and openly shared their knowledge of the magic. But after they opened their land for humans, they were just occupied and slaughtered. The final boss of the area is also a representation of Snake itself, and the whole room is the sixth celebration of the defeat of the giants, with the throne being made out of the giant's bone and this stained glass humbly depicting Lord Kenneth before he got transformed into this half-human, half-snake form. And the stained glass is supposed to be the embodiment of how full of vanity and greed and twisted ambition a person can be. And after you defeat this boss, even though you understand that there are no giants left, at least you've avenged some of them by defeating this sick dude. After that, I took part in the ArtStation Box of Mystery challenge, where we had to create this concept based on the box of mystery. So I decided to go with the Fae topic here and to explore the legends of the Seelie and Unseelie quartz, and I imagined this box of mystery that the player would use as an artifact to place on the altar, and it would help them to traverse through different realms, like basically 4 realms of the Seelie quartz, the spring and summer quartz, and Unseelie quartz, the autumn and winter accordingly. In the end, I've made 2 final concept pieces. One is representative of the Seelie quartz, while the other one of the Unseelie quartz, and the 2 call-out sheets accordingly. Next comes another VTVGA challenge project based on the Bloodborne game, and it is called Imagining Bloodborne II Challenge. And since I already had some experience with Unreal Engine, and by the time I've created the first playable level based on the Velka Crypt, I decided to go full Unreal Engine here and even tried to record this short mini video teaser. So when I was playing Bloodborne, I personally wanted a little bit more of the Cainhurst vibe, so I jumped off this item of the Blood Dregs, where it is mentioned that the Queen Annalise partakes in the Blood Drag offerings so that she may one day bear the child of blood, which will become the next Vile Blood heir. The concept of my entry evolves around this idea of you, the player, being the child of blood, which will be revealed by the end of this entry. Hub looks like the observatory where the vampire Vile Blood scholar Elise is observing the stars and making comments that, apart from the moon, there are other very interesting stars and planets that are waiting to be observed. So your journey begins from the old hinterlands where Eileen is from, and you get this important quest line from the twin brother and sister whose mother is very sick, and basically they tell you that they will soon perform at the noble's manor to earn some money for their mother's treatment. As you proceed further through the game, you get to find one particular manor and the so-called Torment Gardens location where the hedonistic Vile Blood remnants and their kin are enjoying these pleasures of blood and are craving to become the Great Ones themselves. These Vile Bloods get their blood from their victims, and after they drain them, they either get disposed of them in a brutal manner, or if the victim is beautiful or talented, they send their drained bodies to the workshop, where they are turned into these beautiful dolls that would later entertain the nobles. You get where this is going, right? As you reach the final boss arena, you see someone beautifully dancing on the scene. Yes, our talented and caring twins that wanted to earn some money for their mother's treatment basically got captured by the Vile Bloods, who drained them of their blood and turned them into the beautiful dolls that would perform in front of these Vile Bloods forever. After you defeat them, you find this rune carved on their chests, and in the room behind the stage, you find a secret key. This is the key from a spiritual center, where after communicating with a high priestess NPC, you get invited to the particular seance. In the final boss arena, you see this huge Ouija board with carol runes that are carved onto it, and by touching the toggle, you're completing this spiritual circle and finally fight the carol, the runesmith themselves. After that, you visit many more locations, and in the very end game, you get to know that you are this very special child of blood, and in short, you can have 3 endings. What is particularly interesting about this great one is that it's called Doppelganger, and this is what it does. It basically copies all of your abilities and items and weapons, and you are having this very symbolic fight against yourself. And yeah, I know, it sounds a lot like Mimic Tier, but back in 2021 we had no Elden Ring game, we had no Mimic Tier, and I just wanted to implement this idea that seemed, to be honest, really crazy at the time. And the short trailer that I included in my entry is actually the first video on this channel, which is kind of nostalgic in a way. And this was also the year when I was once again contacted by the Mortal Shell team, this time to design the Seeds of Infinity for the Mortal Shell DLC, the Virtuous cycle. Once again, huge thanks to Vitaly Bulgarov for art direction and trusting me with these little items. Last year in August, I released the first video from the Imagining Elden Ring DLC series on the awesome Chanting winged dames that sing the song that is presumably the only one that has legit lyrics, and I imagined that they were once these beautiful sanguine dames residing in the castle of blood and thorns. And legend said that their blood was once cultivated so that they could become the sanguine mothers that would once bear the child of blood. But in reality, the dame's blood was cultivated just to be fed to the giant blood fetus underneath the castle. It's kind of a reference towards the Sekiro and the Child of the Rejuvenating Waters questline. I also have a 50-minute Q&A video describing in detail both the technical aspect of working on this project in Unreal Engine and also describing the storyline, lore references and stuff like that. So if you're interested, I will leave the link for you in the description box. After that, there was this another Elden Ring inspired video where I tried to imagine St.Trina, one of the most enigmatic figures that would probably be seen in the upcoming DLC, Shadow of the Erdtree. And I was planning to develop the story based on the Castle Soul Eclipse legend and the Golden Epitaph Sword, when the Godwin would be granted the true death during the eclipse, and how you would get to that particular point after visiting the realm of dreams and cleansing this world corrupted with nightmares. And soon after that, I was commissioned by the amazing lore master Smoketown to create some visuals for their upcoming Lowbite Queen and the Godskins video. I have an environment feature on this channel where I go a bit deeper into the lore and the symbolism behind those statues. But what I wanted to say is that Smoketown has been so easy to work with. I'm telling you, this project has been finished only within 5 weeks of work. I think this is the fastest I've made a project ever from scratch, taking into consideration the custom-made sculptures and characters, and I am super grateful to Smoketown for this opportunity. I also spoke a lot about VatiVidia's challenges today, and one thing I want to mention is that I really recommend you to go and check out the other artists' works on these challenges. I can't even imagine how difficult it is to be a jury on such a challenge because, frankly speaking, the talent level of these artists is unbelievable. I will put the list of Vati's challenges videos in my description box, and please make sure to go in Vati's description box. And there he has some links to the Google Drives where all of the other entries that didn't make it to the final video are kept. And I'm telling you, there are some real gems there. The Soulsborne community overall is not only crazily talented, but also friendly and supportive of all of the artwork that you make. And I'm really lucky to have made some of my friends there. Unfortunately, that's it. All of my other work projects are under NDA, and this is kind of the reality that you need to accept when working on games. And this is one of the reasons why I actually create these small hobby projects. Not only they're really fun to work on, but they also give you this sense of accomplishment straight away after you finish them. You don't need to wait like for 2 or 3 years for the project to launch. Okay, thank you for sticking with me till the end of this video. If you liked it, please click a like button and subscribe for more art videos to come. And also let me know in the comments, please, if you actually liked this art showcase format and what would you want to maybe change, or what would you want to add to that? Because if it sticks, I think I could be doing that like once a year or once in 2 years. So thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you soon.